The stories on this tape are from Alcee Fortier's research of Louisiana folktales in the 1880s and 90s. This took him back to the River Road and the colorful, dynamic tales he had heard throughout his childhood. Many of these stories on this tape were told to him by a storyteller from Vacherie and Julia and Felicia of New Orleans. These tales had made their way to America aboard the slave vessels bound for Louisiana in the 1720s. Passed down orally for centuries, many of these stories revolve around two popular characters, known as Compair Lapin, a mischievous rabbit, and Bouki, a strong but clever hyena. Compair Lapin is better known in North America as the popular Burr Rabbit. And now the stories begin.
Miss Mockingbird, Mr. Mockingbird, and Mr. Owl. Once upon a time, the Mockingbird and the Owl were courting Miss Mockingbird. She said to them, "Well, I shall marry the one who will remain the longer without eating. I shall remain under the tree and you upon it." Now the Mockingbird looked at his ladylove and flew down to her singing, "Chiva, chiva, ta-la-la-la, chiva, chiva, ta-la-la-la, heava, ta-la-la-la." When he reached Miss Mockingbird, he did as if he wanted to kiss her, and she gave him some food which she had in her beak. Mr. Mockingbird flew back to his tree. The owl, in his turn, flew towards his ladylove, and he sang, "Cuckoo, cuckoo, ta-la-la-la, cuckoo, cuckoo, ta-la-la-la, heava, ta-la-la-la." He wished to kiss Miss Mockingbird, but she turned her head aside and said, "Go away, your wings hurt me." Oh, the poor owl had nothing to eat, while every day the Mockingbird flew down and, kissing the young lady, got something to eat. The owl came down also from the tree, but he was beginning to be very hungry, and his voice was very weak when he sang, "Cuckoo, cuckoo, ta-la-la-la, cuckoo, ta-la-la-la, heava, ta-la-la-la." Miss Mockingbird did not want to look at him or to give him anything to eat, and he had to go back to his tree with an empty stomach. Mr. Mockingbird, on the contrary, grew more boastful every day and sang in a very loud voice, "Chiva, chiva, ta-la-la-la, chiva, chiva, ta-la-la-la, heava, ta-la-la-la." The poor owl was dying of hunger, and one could hardly hear his song. "Cuckoo, ta-la, cuckoo, ta-la-la, heava, ta-la." He tried to kiss Miss Mockingbird, but she said to him, "Go away, your large wings hurt me." And she gave him a slap which threw him down. He was so weak from the hunger that he died, and Mr. Mockingbird flew away with his bride. The Tortoise. A gentleman who was living on the banks of a bayou caught a large tortoise and went immediately to invite some friends to take dinner with him. His little boy, in his absence, went to the cage where the tortoise was, and the tortoise began to whistle. "Oh, my, how well you whistle," said the child. "Oh, that's nothing. Open the cage and you will see." The boy opened the cage, and the tortoise whistled better than ever. The boy was delighted. "Put me down on the floor and you will see," said the tortoise. The boy did so, and the tortoise danced and sang. "Oh, how well you dance and sing," said the boy. "Put me on the bank of the bayou, and you will see," said the tortoise. The boy took her to the bayou, and the tortoise danced and sang better than ever. All at once she disappeared into the water, and the poor little boy began to cry. The tortoise rose in the middle of the bayou and said, Learn not to trust hereafter people whom you do not know. Now the poor little boy was so afraid of his father that he put a large flat stone into the cage. The cook, thinking it was the tortoise, put the stone into the kettle. She was astonished to see that it remained hard so long, and she called her master's attention to it. He ordered the tortoise to be put up on the table, and he took his table knife to cut it. It was in vain. He took the carving knife. It was in vain. He took the hatchet. It was in vain. He took the axe and he broke the dishes. He broke the table, but the tortoise remained intact. He then saw it was just a stone, and to this day he has not understood how his tortoise was changed into a stone.
The Men Who Became Birds. Once upon a time there was a lady who had 12 children, 11 boys and 1 girl. The poor lady died and her husband married again. His second wife was a witch who was very bad. In the daytime, she changed the 11 boys into birds and allowed them to take their human form only at night. As to the girl, she changed her into a black girl. Her father did not know her anymore and put her out of his house. The witch treated her husband's children in that way because she wanted him to leave his money to her own children. When the poor girl was put out of her father's house, she went to see her brothers and told them what had happened to her. They said that the next morning they would take her to another country. They made a bed with leaves, and the next day, when they were birds again, each one took hold of the bed in his beak, and they carried their sister far away into another country. They placed her in a forest and built a pretty little hut for her. One day another witch passed by the hut, and when she saw the young girl, she asked her what she was doing there. The poor girl related her story, and the witch told her she would tell her how to make her brothers remain men all the time. She must make a shirt for each one of her brothers, and not sew the shirts, but weave them, and stay without speaking until the shirts were ready. It took her a long time to do the work, and when she was nearly through, only 1 sleeve was missing to 1 shirt. Her stepmother found out where she was and had her arrested as a witch. They were taking her in a cart to prison when her 11 brothers came flying around the cart. She immediately threw the shirts over them, and they became men again and rescued their sister. As one of the shirts had only 1 sleeve, the brother who had received that shirt had all his life, instead of an arm, a bird's wing. The Statue of St. Anthony. A shoemaker in a small town had a beautiful daughter. One day she saw a young man enter the house next to hers, and she soon fell in love with him. She asked her old cook what could she do to be loved by the young man. The old woman advised her to pray to St. Anthony. She did so, but without effect. "Perhaps he is deaf," said the cook. "Let us make a hole in his ears." When they were trying to bore a hole in the ears of the wooden statue, the servant of the young man whom the girl loved came into the shop. He asked the women what they were doing. They said that they wanted St. Anthony to hear a prayer. The servant made the holes in the ears of the statue and waited at the door outside to hear what was the request of the young girl. As soon as he heard that the young girl was asking St. Anthony to obtain for her the love of her neighbor, he ran to his master and related the story to him. The young man was so flattered by the love of the beautiful girl that he fell in love with her, married her, and lived happily ever after.
This is the story of a poor little boy. There once was a woman who used to say that she was poor and had nothing to eat. Each day her husband went to work, and often with an empty stomach. One day, a little boy knocked at the woman's door and asked her if he could come in and warm himself, and if she would give him something to eat and a place to sleep. But the woman refused. She said she had no fire, nothing to eat, and no place for him to sleep. The little boy was very sad, but he lay on the ground in front of the cabin, and he saw through a crevice in the door all that was being done in the cabin. He saw the woman light a big fire, make biscuit, cook a pig, and he saw a man who was hidden in the room come out and warm himself by the fire. "Ah," said the little boy, "that is why she did not let me come into the house. When her husband is not there, she has a high old time. She's letting me die of hunger and cold outside. But she will pay for this." A little while later, the woman heard someone walking, and as she thought it was her husband, she hid the pig in the cupboard, the biscuit under a sieve, and the man under the bed. When the husband arrived, he saw the little boy lying on the ground freezing, and he said to him, "What are you doing there? Why are you not at home? Did you not ask my wife to let you come in? We are poor, but we always can find a little corner for you." "I'm not at home because I have no father and I have no home. I am not at home because your wife told me there was no room for me." "Come with me. My wife will change her mind." He took the little boy with him, and he made him come in. His wife was astonished to see her husband with the little boy, and she was afraid that they had seen what happened in the house and had told her husband. But the husband appeared very quiet, and he told her that he was glad to see that she had found some wood for the fire, as it was very cold. And he asked her if she had any supper for him. She said no, and then her husband drew out a loaf of bread from his sack and said he had not had much work, and that was all that he could bring. He divided the bread in 3 shares, for him, his wife, and the little boy. Each one ate his bread, and when they were through, the husband said, "Let us relate stories as a pastime before we go to bed." "All right," said the woman, because she knew that stories made her husband go to sleep, and she would be able to make the man escape who was hidden under the bed. "Well," said the husband, "commence first, little boy, because you're the youngest." "I do not know many stories," said the little boy. "My father always told me to tell the truth. I do not know many stories, but I do know some true things." "Well, tell us some true things," said the husband. "Well," said the little boy, "I know there are biscuit under the sieve, pig's meat in the cupboard, and a man under the bed." "That is not true," said the woman, who was trembling with fright. "There is nothing at all." "Let us look, nevertheless," said the husband, who found the biscuit, found the pig, and found the man. The husband was so angry to see that his wife had deceived him that he put her out with the man, who did not want her either, because if she deceived one man, she would certainly deceive another. She died of cold in the wood. The husband told the little boy to stay with him, and he thought he was a magical sorcerer, because the little boy did not tell him how he found out what he had said.
This is a story about John Greenpeace. An old man called John Greenpeace lived in a cabin near the king's palace. As all the chickens of the king were being stolen, he wanted to save his geese, and he asked John to tell him where to put them. John was delighted, as the geese disappeared in the same way as the chickens. The king asked John to tell him where to put his gold, and John told him to put his gold where he'd put the geese. But the gold disappeared also. The neighbors then convinced the king that John was the robber, and the king went with his guards to arrest the old man. John knew what was going on, and he placed on his table a goose with a gold coin under its wings. When the king arrived, John showed him the goose and told him that whenever he needed money, the goose would give him some if he played on the fiddle. The king bought the goose, but when he saw how John had deceived him, he had him put into a bag to be thrown into the river. The men who were carrying the bag got drunk and left John for some time in the road. He heard a shepherd coming with the flock, and he began crying that he would not marry the king's daughter. The shepherd took John's place in the bag in order to marry the king's daughter, and the old man went away with the sheep. The king met John, who told him that he had found the sheep and the gold at the bottom of the river. The king threw himself into the river and was drowned. Poor, silly, simple king, to leave a palace, to jump into the river?
This is the story of the good little servant. There once was a gentleman who was very good and very rich. His wife always pretended to be sick and needed all kinds of extraordinary remedies, which her good husband would go and get for her. The woman only did this to get her husband out of the way and be able to squander his money. One day, she said she must have seawater or she would die. The gentleman had a little servant boy called little Margot, who always went with him on his trips. When the gentleman went to get the seawater, little Margot was left behind, and he saw what the mistress was doing with her husband's money. She was preparing to give a great ball and a great supper. Little Margot went to tell his master what he had seen, and he asked him to let him act. They came back secretly to the house, and little Margot told all of the servants to follow him and do whatever he would order them. He put his master in a big basket, and he filled it with a number of whips. During the ball, little Margot came into the dance hall with 2 men carrying the big basket, followed by other servants. The mistress and her guests thought it was some fine presents and crowded around the basket. "Here is my master, back!" And then taking the whips from the basket, he gave them to the servants and to his master, who whipped the guest and lady unmercifully. The gentleman put his wife out of the house, and he said to her, "You do not need any seawater now. cure you.
This story is about Compair, Bouki, and the monkeys. One day, Compair Bouki put fire under his kettle, and when the water was very hot, he began to beat his drum and to cry out, "Sambombel, Sambombel Tom, Sambombel, Sambombel Dom." The monkeys heard this and said, "What? Bouki has something good to eat. Let us go." And they ran up to Bouki and sang, "Molesi, Sheguine, Shervan, Shegiye, Shervan." Compair Bouki then said to the monkeys, "Listen, I shall enter into the kettle, and when I say I am cooked, you must take me out." He jumped into the kettle, and the monkeys pulled him out as soon as he said, "I am cooked." Then the monkeys in their turn jumped into the kettle and cried out immediately on touching the water, "We are cooked." Bouki, however, took his big blanket and covering the kettle said, "If you were cooked, you could not say so." One little monkey alone escaped, and that bad Bouki ate all the others. Sometime after this, Compair Bouki was hungry again, and he called the monkeys, "Sambombel, Sambombel Tom, Sambombel, Sambombel Dom." When the monkeys came running, he jumped into the kettle again and said, "I am cooked, I am cooked." The monkeys, however, which had been warned by the little monkey which had escaped the first time, did not pull Bouki out, but said, "If you were cooked, you could not say so." So Bouki could not fool those monkeys twice, could he? Our last folk tale is about Compair Lapin's Godchild. Once upon a time, Compair Lapin was working for Compair Bouki. Bouki had bought a barrel of butter and had hidden it in his cellar. One day, the two companions were working in the field together, when all at once, Lapin raised his head and said, "They are calling me to be godfather to a child." "Go immediately," replied Bouki. "You must not make them wait." Lapin ran off, and when he returned, Bouki said to him, "Well, did you baptize the child? How did you call him?" Lapin said, "I called him Begun." Bouki said, "Indeed, that is a strange name." A little while later, Lapin raised his head again and said, "They are calling me again to be godfather to another child." "Go," said Bouki. "You cannot tell them no." Compair Lapin ran off again and remained away longer than the first time. On his return, Bouki said, "How did you call the child this time?" Lapin replied, "I called him Half." "Half? But what name is that? I never heard such strange names as those which you give the children baptized by you." A little later again, while they were working, Lapin raised his head and said, There, they are calling me again for another child. It is very annoying. I shall never be able to finish my work." "Go," said Bouki. "You cannot say no." Lapin ran off, laughing to himself. When he returned, Bouki said, "What is the name of this child?" "Oh," said Lapin, "I called him All Finished." because I do not want to be godfather to any other child." A little while later, Bouki said to himself, "I must have a good dinner. Let me fill my butter dish with my good butter." He looked into his barrel. There was nothing in it. Lapin had eaten all the butter. "Oh, that is too much," said Bouki. "He will pay me for that." He caught Lapin. He tied him with a rope and said, "Now, what am I going to do with you? I'll throw you in the river." "Ah, yes," said Lapin. "That is what I like." "No," said Bouki. "You are too glad. I'll throw you in the fire." "Ah, yes, throw me in the fire. Please throw me in the fire." "No, you are too glad. Too glad indeed. I'll throw you in the briars." "Oh, I pray you, my dear Bouki, do not throw me in the briars." "Yes, it is there you must go." Bouki threw Lapin in the briars. As soon as he fell, he cut the rope with his teeth and ran away saying, "Thank you, my good Bouki. You placed me exactly where my mother resides. I grew up in the briar patch." And that is the end of the story.
All the funds generated from the sale of these tapes go to further enhance the Laura Center for Creole Heritage, a nonprofit organization in Vacherie, Louisiana. The storytellers who donated their talents were the Laura Girls, Gail Perry, Eloise O'Quinn, Marcia Keegan, Betty Como, and coordinated by Joanne Para, with special thanks to our coach, Ray Para.